On the other side of a storm is the strength that comes from navigating through it. Raise your sail and begin. Just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're failing. I think sometimes people equate struggling with failure. It's not. It isn't even close. In fact, if you're struggling, it tells me that you're still in the game. We don't see these incredible opportunities first, because every opportunity that you and I have is surrounded by a problem. I've never gone to an opportunity that I didn't have to go to the door of problems first. So the next time you have an obstacle, a difficulty, an adversity in your life, don't allow the crisis to numb you. Be alive, learn, feel, fail, learn. That's what it's all about if you want to make this difficult time a good time. I just want you to know that there's a hero within you. I know there is. And during this tough time, let the hero out. Let people see the best of you, your highest aspirations. You be the one who's the lifter and the encourager.
Hey, welcome to the John Maxwell Leadership When It Matters the Most series. Now, for the last 3 weeks, John has brought to you in this leader series leaders that are leading in a way that has profoundly impacted him. Today is no different. In fact, today you're getting ready to meet Miles McPherson, and you too are going to be impacted not only by his story, not only by his message, but the way he is leading in this time when it matters the most. So thank you for joining yet again. I'm going to get out of the way in just a moment, but let me give you a couple of few housekeeping ideas. One, you want to stay to the end because I'm going to help you connect with Miles McPherson and what he's doing to lead in this time of crisis. Secondly, we're going to have a time after John and Miles talks, we're going to have a time of questions and answers from you, our audience. And so I look forward to that. We hope that our series is impacting you. We hope that you're leading better. And today, you're going to have the opportunity to see somebody that is leading better. Now, before I throw it to you, John, and let you ask some questions, because you've been, I was going to say neck deep, but you've been head deep in Miles McPherson's book, The Third Option. And let me tell you about The Third Option, because it was written some time ago, but it was written to give hope for a racially divided nation. You think Miles had a little bit of insight a couple of years ago when he released this book?
He's a prophet.
Miles is a pro football player. I guess we're in the series because Casey was a pro football player we had last week. Miles played for the San Diego Chargers for 4 years, but now he impacts 20,000 people a week, not only in the San Diego area, but around the world with his message of hope and impacting your community. And Miles, I don't know if we'll get to that, but at some point we're going to have you on here. We're going to talk about what you're doing to mobilize believers, community of believers, to impact their community, because John is passionate about community transformation. But today we're talking to you about the third option, this idea of hope for a racially divided nation. And John, I know you're going to want to say more about Miles, but John, thank you for bringing yet again one of your friends to this program.
Thank you, Mark. And I am excited that you're going to hear from my friend Miles. You see, one of the ways I try to add value to you is bring people that I value into your life. It's kind of like, who do you know that I should know? And you should know Miles McPherson. The reason you should know him is because he's a great man of character. He is a terrific friend. I've seen him up close. He lives the life. He walks the talk. But he has more than just a good example. He has leadership ability to show us the way. You know, leaders know the way, grow the way, show the way. Miles is that type of a leader. And I'm so excited because Miles and I were together really just a little bit, about 2 weeks before, 3 weeks maybe before COVID-19. We were together at a conference. And he had written a book that he'd introduced me to, and he gave it to me, and it's called I'm holding it now for you because I'm holding it long enough for you to see it, because you all want to go get this book today. You want to order it, and we'll tell you even how you can do that a little bit later. But this is the third option. And I took this book with me to Israel. I was leading a group of leaders over there. And so I read it on the plane going over, marked it all up. He had signed it for me, and then did what I've done for 5 or 6 iPads in my life. I left it on the plane. So I came back and I said, Mark, we got to get Miles. This is a great book. And so I went out and he gave me the first one. I bought the second one. Hello. So, I finally got in the game to help you out a little bit, Miles. But I bought it. And so I've marked it again. Now, you know that when I read a book, I've taught you, the first time I mark the book, the second time I read it, I read my markings. I mark the book the first time, the second time the book marks me. So I got the book and I marked it all up again. And in fact, I'd love to have the other one so I could compare my markings. And as I was reading this, though, I said to myself, okay, I've got to get this to people that love what I love, value what I love. And Miles McPherson is just a beautiful friend, brother. He's family. I love him. I love who he is. I love what he does. I love who he is in my life, and I love what he does for my life. And it's kind of like, I know him, you need to know him, and you need to know this book. So what I'm going to do, I shared with Mark and Miles on the phone conversation yesterday. He said, I'm going to be a hog. I am literally going to dominate this thing because I have questions I want to ask Miles because he helps me. And what I learned a long time ago is if I find somebody that helps me, I want to expose them to you because they'll help you too. So he's going to help all of us. And so, Miles, thanks for coming, precious friend. I love you. And I'm ready to dive into this book, and we're going to take a little baptism into the third option. Is that okay?
Yes, I need to say thank you to you, John, for we've known each other for 30-something years.
Yeah.
And I know all of your audience know this, but John is a true general in the faith and in this world, and he doing things more than all of us can even imagine. So thank you for being my friend, and thanks for starting when I came to San Diego in 1982 to play football, and I think we met in 1984 or something. But thanks for being my friend all these years.
Oh, Miles, it's so good. Let me ask you a question. I was thinking about this when I was coming over today. You started out with Horizon, isn't that right? Didn't you, Miles?
Yeah.
Were you with Mike McIntosh?
Yes.
I thought you were. So he was the lead pastor when you came in. You were playing football, et cetera, and started at Horizon. Can you how's Mike?
I haven't talked to him in a little while. He's doing pretty good. He's still traveling. He always has back problems, but he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, I knew he had back. He and I got our masters at Azusa.
So did I. You were in my class.
Yeah. And so
let me clarify, everybody. John came for 5 minutes of class. John came in, did a little this, did a little that, and then he was doing. I'm like, what?
Oh, Miles, you're killing me. You're just don't listen to him right. This is not why he is on this. I did kind of slip in and slip out a little. I will confess, I wasn't quite that primary student like you were.
You already had a doctorate. I don't know why you were in the class. We had it at your church. It was at your church.
I had it at my church, so I wouldn't have to go far to class. But hey,
there you go.
But Mike McIntosh graduated with me at Azusa Pacific, and of course, you were in that class. I told Mike that on graduation day, I said, because they were not really giving us true diplomas, they're giving fake. They were so they could move the line. And when I found that, I said, Mike, let's go last. He said, well, why do you want to go last? I said, because when we go up last, the people are going to be so happy this is over. They're going to clap and they're going to cheer. They're going to go crazy. And sure enough, I was the last one. And when they called my name, of course, everybody can see there's nobody after me. The lines, they're clapping, they're cheering. And I said, Mike, what did I tell you? These people don't know me from apple butter, but it doesn't matter. They were happy to get it over. Oh, shoot. Okay. Enough of that. Okay. That says you must lose in order for me to win. And then you said God's third option, the third option, which is what this book is about, invites us to honor that which we have in common.
Yeah.
You just come and you take this issue and you just take a whole fresh approach. So let's talk about the title, Third Option, and what does it mean to you when you wrote this book, and what is the message you want us to get out of the third option?
Thanks. Let's give me a history of my life and experience real quick. I have all my grandparents are from Jamaica, West Indies, 2 Black fathers. Grandfather, he was not allowed to go in the front door of a house. And so when they got married, her family, my white grandmother's family, ostracized her. So we only knew her. We grew up in a Black neighborhood, went to school in a white neighborhood. I got harassed in both because I wasn't white. I wasn't Black, so I got harassed in the white neighborhood. And I got harassed in the Black neighborhood because I wasn't Black enough. I wasn't dark enough. But I had a United Nations family, and football teams were integrated. So it was just a term, stressful. Martin Luther King was killed when I was 8. And when he was killed, I said to myself, what can we do? And ever since then, I've been thinking about how can I help? What can I do? And so fast forward a bunch of years, I wrote the third option. And ever since beginning of time, there's been an us versus them culture. It's either you're for Blacks or against Blacks. You're for the police or against the police. You're for immigrants or against the immigrants. You're a Republican or Democrat. And the culture is divides us between us and them. And if you pick us, you are automatically the enemy of them. And if you're for us and you agree with them, you become a sellout. That's why if you're a Republican and you agree with a Democrat or vice versa, they crucify you, because it's always about us versus them. The third option between one of those is the prophetic, is that how can we honor and give value to what we have in common, because we have more similarities than differences.
That's right.
All of us love our sleep, I'm sure, love our food, love our family. We want purpose. We bleed red. We have all the same muscles and bones and organs, and we're all made in the image of God. And we're all on a journey. This is the other thing. Every single one of us are learning. All of us are on a journey. So even when it comes to judging people, if we all remember, we're all on a journey together. And so I wrote the book to give us tools on how to bridge the gap and build bridges with each other based on what we have in common versus trying to compare what our differences are.
Wow.
See, that is a breath of fresh air to me. When I started reading the book, you did a great job getting the message across. And I love the third option. And I'm going now to page 25, because you said something that just spoke to my heart when you said, Miles, honor assigns value to someone. Viewing someone as honorable causes us to treat them with a holy reverence. I just absolutely love that passage. When I graduated from college, Miles, my father, I asked him for advice as I started the ministry, and he said 3 things, son. He said, believe in people, value people, and unconditionally love them. If you'll do those 3 things, he said, son, you'll attract people to God, because you'll become attractive. People will want to be around you because very few people have anyone that really believes in them. He said, very few people have anyone that really truly values them. And he said, hardly anyone has anyone that unconditionally loves them. And so he put me on this grid, this track of valuing people. When I read this statement here on page 25, Miles, I said to myself, precious friend, brother, you and I understand how to bring this all together. We really understand how to bring it. And it begins with honoring one another. It begins with valuing one another. Just tee off on that just for a moment for me.
I'm going to tee off on it. They asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? And there's some commandments better than others, right? And he said, love God with your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So why is there so much division, especially even in the church where we claim that we love our God and love our neighbor? What we do is when we take the word neighbor out of that, when we replace the word neighbor on someone's life and we dehumanize them by giving them a label less than neighbor, we disqualify them from us having to love them because they're not my neighbor. So if you call somebody a white this or a black this or a thug or immigrant or a looter or whatever it is, once you put that label on them, you dehumanize them and you diminish their value. And God says he's made them in his image. He loves them. You diminish their value, and then you don't have to love them because they're not your neighbor. And so if you put the label neighbor on people, and by the way, whatever label you put on someone, you can't love them and see them anything above that label. So if you call someone dumb, you'll never see them smart. If you call them ugly, you'll never see them beautiful. But if you call them neighbor, son, love it. That's why, everybody listen, if you pay attention to John's words, John calls you, he just called me 5-10 words that are all positive. Friend, beloved, special friend, a loyal friend. All these labels are honorable. And once you give someone an honorable label and you are placing value on them with your words and your titles. And so when you see someone on television, I was talking to Anderson Cooper the other day, and we were talking about, all the protests and some of the looters. And I said, Anderson, they're looting, but let's not call them looters. They're people made in the image of God with potential. They just happen to be doing bad things, because once you label them, you just capped off what they can be, at least in your own mind. And so if we could put the label, honorable labels, labels that value them, then we will see them different and we will treat them different.
You're so right on. Again, going back to my dad's example, or his advice to me, believe in people, value people, unconditional love them. Here's what I learned from that. When I value you, I view you in positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't value you, if I devalue you, now all of a sudden, I won't add. You don't add value to people that you devalue. You just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You only add value to people that you truly honor and value. And that's why when Dad said, if you'll value people, what he was telling me, he said, when you teach your lessons, you'll view them correctly. When you interact with them, you'll deal with them correctly. In other words, he said, our perspective is so important to our behavior. And your book does such a great job with it. And because I write books, I loved the way you framed this book. And what I mean by that is you talk about me, you, and we. And your book just follows that all the way through. And because I love outlines and I love process, talk to us about that, Miles, about the me, you, and we, and how you set up the book to help us again honor and understand one another.
Especially in this time of division, it's very easy to be defensive and to defend myself. And so your fault. And if you listen to all the people listening to the conversations of your friends and family and the media, you'll hear a lot of people talking about them, those people, and it's never talking about me. And if I humble myself first, I mean, if I'm going to be the best person I can be, I'm the only one responsible for me. I'm not responsible for you. And so if in this process of growing and learning how to deal with this topic, which is a very sensitive topic, I got to learn, how do I view people? How do I value people? And by the way, when you value people, as your dad was saying, if you look for something that's good, you'll find it. And so if I say, look, I got to deal with myself and my inability to see people and inability to love people. What are my blind spots? We'll talk about here in a minute. I have enough work to do here. And once I can do that, then I'm able not to correct you, but I'm able to love you. I'm able to place value on you, because if I can't place value on you, that's not because of you. It's because of me. It's not because of something you did. It's because of something I am. And so if I can correct me first, and then I can love you second, because it's not about winning an argument, it's about winning a heart. So how do I love you second better, based on whatever you say to me? And then once we do that, now we together can go change the world.
Yeah, I love it, Miles. This is not about an argument. This is about winning a heart. And I love how you do in this book constantly take us again to what we have in common, our common ground, our similarities. Let's talk about self-awareness. Let's talk about blind spots here for a moment, because in my book on the laws of growth, I talk about the fact that you can't grow yourself if you don't know yourself. And so self-awareness is huge for me. I've got to look and but the first thing I have to know about me is that I'm not self-aware, that I have blind spots. And I love a person when they say, well, I'm very self-aware. In fact, you had a statement in your book. I put it in my notes. It said, the person says, I don't have blind spots. I see everything just fine. And I loved your answer, Miles. You look at it and say, well, it's nice to meet you, Jesus. Whoa, didn't know, Jesus, you're going to be here physically today. Whoa, this is really good. And I love it because you just very plainly help all of us. We all have blind spots. What I always tell, when people ask me what my greatest leadership challenge is, Miles, I tell them my greatest leadership challenge is me. I'm my biggest problem. If I had to kick the person most responsible for my problems, I wouldn't be able to sit down for a week. I mean, I'm the problem. Okay. So I love how you approach this. The blind spots now help me, because one of the things I'm trying to do, and I'm not there, but I'm trying to do that, is the other person. But it helps me there. So maybe just help us with a couple blind spots that you just see that we have as humans, again, because we all have them, that will help us in this situation.
Yeah, a blind spot is not knowing what you don't know, or it's the gap between your intent of what you say and do and the impact of what you say and do. For example, when people say they don't see color, their intent is to build a bridge. I'm not going to judge you, but the impact to the person of color is you just erase what I am. The great Galatians says to bear one another's burdens, and by bearing their burdens, you can love them. But if you ignore the color and the burden that comes with the color, you can't carry the burden because you just ignored the burden. There was a young lady who went to Hawaii and she got a tan. She was white, she got a tan. She came back and she was celebrating her tan and showing off her tan. And it's amazing how we can celebrate a tan from Hawaii, but a tan in the womb, we invalidate and ignore it. And so when you say you don't see color, you're telling someone, I don't see what you are. I remember the first time someone told me that, they thought they were saying something nice, but I thought they had eye stigmatism, but they said, no, I just don't see your color. The only time we say it is when we see people of color. So I think that is a blind spot. Another blind spot is that if I don't have racism in my life, then it's really not as bad as people say. There have been many white couples that I've met who've adopted black kids, and in their mind, they think, well, I'm going to bring them into my world and everything's going to be fine because I don't have it. I don't experience racism. But what happened is they brought them into their family and they realized how much racism was in their family and in their neighborhood because they weren't experiencing it. It was a blind spot. We all have a social narrative. It's the story that helps us see the world. And it's the information you receive from your family, your parents, your kids, your neighborhood, your school. And it develops a prescription through which you interpret the news, through which you interpret people and how you understand people. It puts labels on people. And so that social narrative is going to put blinders on you because you're only going to see the world through that lens. And then you're going to surround yourself with people who believe the same thing. It's called social reinforcement. So now you have this world that says, here's what right is. Well, that's only right for you. Imagine growing up in a Republican family and you hear all Republican stuff. Well, the Democratic family is hearing all Democratic stuff. And of course, they both think they're right, but they're both only opinions of the people that taught them. Well, those cause blind spots because if we don't know the other people's perspective, we don't know what we don't even know. And so we all have them.
In your book, we'll get to this in a moment, Miles. We're not there yet. But what I love about what you have done is the projects, the field trips that you have put people on. This was very simple, but it was very powerful. Because you talk about the best way to walk in your shoes, to quote, be that minority, is to put somebody like me in a group of people that are not my color, and all of a sudden I am that minority. And we'll get to the field trips in a moment. But on page 90, Mark, I'm going as fast as I can. You have to understand. If it wasn't,
Mark, forget it. Just forget it.
If it wasn't a good book, I'd be done.
That's right.
He has too much good material. It's his fault. It's not my fault. I can't skip everything. What am I supposed to do? Skip chapters just because he's okay here
And that's
on
not
page.
anybody. He's not blaming anybody, right?
Yeah. Hey, it can't be me, Miles. Come on, it can't be me. But you said you talk about. I loved it. You called your church a Skittles church. I thought that was a great. I just thought, and then Mark, remember on our call yesterday, you and I were talking about our John Maxwell team as a Skittles team.
That's exactly.
And I thought how healthy, how right that is. I mean that's yeah, how biblical, how God that is. So, but anyway, on page 90, Miles, you said, and we've hit it. So I'm hit it one more time, then I'm off of it. I can tell you the answer isn't choosing the right side or the right people. The answer lies in humbling ourselves and serving a purpose that's bigger than any side or any one of us. That is a loaded, powerful statement. Do you want to make a comment on that, friend?
Think about all the different social narratives and all the different perspectives of life that we all carry. Imagine if we can put those all in a stew or in a bomb and blow up love all over the world. I mean, my perspective is so limited, my abilities. And I go to sports. Football is the greatest sport in the world. We walk in a locker room, we got people that look like accountants, the kickers, right? And some quarterbacks.
That's so true.
And then you got guys that look like, Hulk Hogan, and we are one team. There's no question. And when that kicker kicks that ball, we're all lifting him up. We are one team. And and when it comes to life, if we can appreciate all the different perspectives in life of the people that we can meet, but if we're just around the same people who are just like us, we're going to be very limited in what we can do.
Beautiful, beautiful illustration. I'm on page 104. I'm reading a paragraph. We're getting to the apology bandwagon now, okay, Miles? Because in fact, I love that phrase. I love that phrase. But I'm reading. You said countless offenses and counteroffenses have broadened the racial divide in our communication. And in order to stop the cycle and move toward healing and unity, someone has to say, "I'm sorry." And when they do, the response consistent with the image of God is, "I forgive you." Both this apology and forgiveness are consistent with loving our neighbor and honoring the image of God in ourselves and in others. Refusing to apologize and refusing to accept an apology, that's dishonoring to the heart of God, a God who models unconditional forgiveness to us. And so you encourage us in the book to try to take a step in apologizing or either forgiving someone else. And you talk about the apology bandwagon. I just believe that this is a bridge that we all have to cross. We've all fallen short. We've all come up short. And I think that I have to say, many times, please forgive me. I was wrong. I just misunderstood. I missed it. And I think there's something about asking forgiveness. I think there's something about granting forgiveness that is godlike and healing. You want to hit that any format?
Absolutely. When it comes to racism and all kinds of offense, but let's specifically talk about racism, we live below the standard of the image of God we have. So we insult our very potential in doing it. So when we forgive, we are living up to the potential. When I go back to blind spots, I think one of the liberating things people can do today, especially white people, because white people, this conversation is relatively new to you. People of color, we've dealt with it all our lives and all our generations, but it's new to you in the sense that you have to now engage in the conversation. And it's scary. I get that. And especially with people being shamed all the time. I think one of the most liberating things you can do is find people of color in your life. And by the way, white is a color. I know in our culture, we say white people and people of color. That's, again, a cultural thing. But as far as God's concerned, white's a color. If you look in the dictionary, it's a color. So it's a range. And by the way, I think white people are more colored than anybody because y'all are white in the springtime. You're either red or brown in the summertime. Then you're blue when you get cold. So I'm just saying. So you guys got the whole rainbow. But
we're multicolor, man. We're multicolor.
But in reality, we're all different shades of brown. So, but if whites can say, listen, I don't know what to say, one of the best things you can do is go up to a person of color that you have a relationship with and say, one, is there anything I say or do that's offensive? Because you can be racially offensive and not be a racist. You can say offensive things and, you know, that you're joking, you think you're funny, you're not funny, you're awkward, you don't know what to say, and not necessarily be. Now you may be and not really realize it, but you can go up to a friend and say, listen, is there anything I do or say? And then say, forgive me. It is so liberating to admit I'm wrong. And then, of course, the response, as you said, the God image response is, I forgive you, let's move on. I mean, Drew Brees wrote the forward to my book, and he said what he said. And I've been asked in all the interviews, what do you think about that? 3 things. I know Drew and love him. He made a mistake, and he's going to make it right. Simple. Let's move on. And I talked to him the other day, and he's a stand-up guy. He had a blind spot. And now we can move on. We need him on a team, right? We need him on a team. So I think if people could just be humble and be humble learners, and humble learners from people that maybe before you wouldn't learn from. That's another level of humility.
I love that. And you know what I assume? Tell me, before I go to the next one, tell me if I see this correctly, because I may not, Miles. I assume I love the question you ask when you say, go up and say, do I say things or do things that are racially insensitive? I love that question because I don't know sometimes. I would never do it on purpose. I know that, but I don't know. And I think it's a humbling act just to ask the question, because you know what I assume, Miles? I assume in my life that I do things that are racially insensitive, but I just don't know it. And unless somebody helps me and gives me the blind spot, you know, and I just would that not be true that most of us, even who greatly value people, we just don't know. And the only way we're going to know is to ask somebody to help us. Am I missing something here?
No, you're exactly right. And if all of us can humbly take that position, here's the thing. Relationships are built on either contractual love or covenant love. And the contractual love is you do this, I do this, you do this, I do this. Covenant love says, I'm going to love you and you got room to mess up and we're going to work it out. And so you want to have friends that work on that. Yeah. But if you have friends that are contractual love, you're always going to break a rule and be slammed for it. And so we want to give the love that God gave, which is covenant love, which is based on grace.
Wow. And I love that distinction you say. And by the way, that's in your book. It's in your book on the difference between contractual love and covenant love. I love that. I'm now over on page 121 because you introduced me to another word that I didn't know. It's otherhood. I love that. Other than the hood. Okay, I missed that one. I've never used otherhood. And you talk about what it's about is being able to see from another perspective, walk into the shoes of someone else that is not like you, and you give them you take people on otherhood trips. Can you just could you just give us an example of that so it again helps us to see the perspective we need to see? I would love that.
And this is in the book. I send several white people, ask them to go to a place where they were the only white person. Yeah. And a couple of people I asked started talking about, you know, they didn't want to be in danger and they can't run and they wouldn't even go to a black church if, you know, because they would be scared. I think he actually wrote that in there. But a couple of people, one lady went to a black church, another guy went to a black barbershop, and they answered questions. What did you feel when I asked you to go? What did you feel when you were driving there? How did people treat you? What did you expect? How did you expect to be treated? And so all the questions were in the book. And because people have perceptions based on their social narrative. And often people's never been in this situation, but yet they already have a conclusion of what's going to happen. And so these people went, some didn't, but these people went and they talked about their experience. And one young lady went to a black church and she was nervous in the church. And her mind was racing. What do they think of me? Am I the enemy? Do they think I hate them? And when you experience that, one, you're going to learn about all the things that you had wrong. And two, you're going to learn about what people of color deal with every day, what we're thinking about, how whites are looking at us. And then you kind of have some empathy about, man, I didn't know, because if you're we talk about in-group, out-group, we didn't get to that, but if you're around people like you all the time, those are thoughts you don't have to worry about as much. And so it's very important for people to have that experience.
Yeah, I just love your field trip idea. We had at the John Maxwell team, we have a volunteer faith service every time. And Mark, you'll remember this a few years ago. We had a very special team member who's Muslim who came to our volunteer faith service because I was going to talk about parenting from a biblical perspective. And she wants to be a really good parent. And she came to me and said, I'm very nervous. She said, I've never been in a service like this before. And I said, well, sit beside me. Sit beside me. I'm going to go teach in a little while, but for a while, just sit right here. And I said, if you get nervous or if you feel uneasy in time, it's okay. Just tap me on the shoulder, and I'll walk out with you. We'll go out together. But again, it was the whole issue. It was an environment that she wasn't used into, and I think it's just human when you aren't used to certain things to have your antennas up in that process. But I love. Go ahead.
One of the other blind spots is we invite people into our world, but we don't go to their world. And
right on, Miles.
And it will help you. And it's somewhat of a savior mentality. Like, you come to my house, it's safe over here, but I'm not going to your house because I don't know. And that is a blind spot and can be racially offensive to the person who's always being invited, but you never want to say, hey, can I come visit your family? Can I go to your neighborhood? Can I eat your food? That is something that will build a lot of bridges with people when you go walk in their life.
That's a great insight. In fact, I've said that in the church world. We invite them into our world and say, well, let's make them comfortable, but we don't go. And what did Paul say? Paul said, I entered their world. I entered their world to see things from their perspective. This is just huge. And you're just hitting the bullseye. Mark, let me ask you a question. I have like two more questions. Do I have time to ask?
You do.
Or do I have to?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, good. I was really going to do it, but it's just proper to ask.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. I was like, Mark, he's going to do it anyway.
Well, okay. Again, I'm just going to stop for a moment. This book, I've read it twice, but you want to get it. Mark's going to tell you how to do this at the end, but you stay with me. This is a book that's going to help you get a better perspective on what we're facing right now. Okay, here we go. On page 143, you talk about the real problem. It lies far beneath public policy debates that are between political commentators. The real problem can only be addressed through God's loving transformation in our hearts. And you really say, laws are very important and public policy is very important. We're not diminishing that at all. But Miles, you're saying there's something deeper than that we really have to work on. Could you talk about that for a moment?
I've been looking at these police shootings, and my dad was a cop. My son is a cop. They're bad cops, but they're great cops. It's a difficult job. My dad, as a cop, arrested cops. So they're just human with a difficult job, and there's some bad apples. Yeah. But I'm watching some of these incidences, and it dawned on me that sometimes the law makes love illegal. And what I mean by that is that the law says you have to do this, this, this. And there was a guy who shot the other day. He was drunk. He was sleeping in his car. He got out and they talked to him, and he says, I just want to go home and I can walk. He ended up a few minutes later dead. And the cop shot him. The cop kicked him after he shot him. And but here's what he said: I just want to go home. I can walk. It's 2 blocks. Right there, love could have said, "I'll take you home," or you go ahead and walk. And if your heart is not changed, you're just going to write laws that have loopholes in them. It's not really going to take in consideration how do we help people grow versus how do we keep them out of jail or minimize prison time. But how do we lift people up instead of minimizing how much we push them down? And that we have to have that mentality. But until hearts are changed, we're not going to see that. That's why this book is so critical. And this philosophy, if you will, point of view is the third option is that, listen, I want you to live just like I want to live. I want you to have a family just like I want to have a family. So how can I help you get there versus finding a way to get my arrest or finding a way to make you right wrong and me right?
Yeah. Grace is above the law. If the law would have done it, Jesus wouldn't have had to come.
Exactly.
I mean, It's just that simple. On page 187, I love this comment on meaningful conversations. You said, what is a meaningful conversation? I suggested a dialogue in which all participants grow and learn a different facet of the truth. If you're not seeing new truth from different perspectives, you're probably not having meaningful conversations. A meaningful conversation occurs when two people stop trying to talk each other into their point of view. I love this. They stop trying to talk each other into the point of view, and the third truth emerges out of both parties. In other words, they're not sitting down to win an argument on who's right. Talk about meaningful conversation.
Yeah, I talk about having race consultations, not race conversations. And I go back to the fact that we all see color. John, when you and Mark are talking, you are both 100% aware that both of you are white. That's not a bad thing. It's just reality. When you look in the mirror, you know you're talking to a white guy. It's just reality. So every time you have a conversation with any human or even yourself in the mirror, you are having a race conversation. Because the guy or the woman you're talking to, they are either affirming what you think about people like that, or they're expanding what you think about people like that. I met a white kid down here at the golf course, 25 years old, in shape, had a little golf uniform. He worked there, and he gave me a ride in the golf cart to my car. And I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Iowa." And he said, I said, "How old are you?" 25. He's in shape. And then I asked him his name. Now, I want you to imagine, in my mind, I'm looking at and talking to a white kid from Iowa. So I have all these assumptions based on my social narrative. It's not bad to have assumptions. What's bad is when you impose those on somebody as fact. So I have my assumptions. I put them over here and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "My name is DeAndre." Now, that's not a name. Why you're laughing? Because that's not a name from a white kid in Iowa that I would expect.
Not from Iowa.
But he expanded my understanding of white kids from Iowa. So whenever you meet somebody, you want to acknowledge what you're thinking, put it over here, and then let them self-disclose to you who they are. It was a young lady in Central Park who had a dog off the leash. And I think she was in the bird watching section. It was a law that you have the dog on the leash. So an African-American guy said, "Can you put your dog on a leash?" She starts yelling at him, tell him to get away. And she calls the cops. It's all on video. And says the African-American man is threatening my life. Well, she had these assumptions because he was black that he was dangerous. Well, the guy was a Harvard grad. He was a gentleman. He's got a great job. He was just taking pictures of birds. She didn't have a consultation to find out who he is, what his life is like. And if we gave people opportunity, because God made amazing people, to express to them and reveal to us who they are, we would make a lot of friends versus having the snap judgment that we assume is fact. You can have the snap judgment, but here's the beautiful thing. Put it over here and watch how not wrong you are, but watch how much God can expand your understanding of who they are.
And I love your word expand. I think that is because I think assumptions keep us in a box. And I think awareness expands us. That's so good. Okay, last thing, Mark. I'm sorry, but because I got to have this because this is so important. When you get to the we part of your book, Miles, you talk about you give 4 words, and this is you talk about like how to practical. Here's your game plan. Here's your assignment. If you really want to start making some progress in it, and the words are count, walk, ask, and love. And you talk about count, look around, be aware, count the people that are in pain. A lot of people in pain all around you. Walk into their lives, ask how you can help them, and love them, which basically you respond to their answer in a loving, positive way. I just felt that this was a phenomenal wrap up for practicality on this book. So talk to us about those 4 words for a moment.
Our outreach philosophy at our church is count, walk, ask, love. So count. If you're in homeless ministry, how many homeless people are there? How many bridges do they sit under? How many people get arrested every day? How many people are raped every year? All those people represent a family. So you can put numerics to pain. Then you walk to them. You don't invite them to the church. We go to them wherever they are. We just bought a strip club a year ago. We get ready to convert it. It's a closed. It's not operating. It's not an operating strip club. it was a 50-year-old strip
club. All kind
of
assumptions are popping up right now.
When they came, these businessmen came and asked me that I want to partner with them. I said, I don't have any strip club money in my budget. But they said, we'll help you out. So we're converting it to be a place for refuge for human traffickers, victims of human trafficking. So
beautiful.
Go to these places. We send women in real strip clubs that are operating to minister to the women. So count, walk, and then say, how can I help you? Not you're this, you're this, you're this. How can I help you? Because I don't know. And then you love them. You don't do what they say, because they may say, buy me drugs. You say, we want to love you. So that we do about $4 million of volunteer service every year for our city, and we base it on that, going out, finding the need, and asking how we can help. Asking the mayor, the police chief, how can we help you? How can we serve you? John, you missed one thing though that I want to talk about was in group, out group.
Oh yes, okay. Well, I'm so sorry I missed a page. Excuse me.
I can summarize it so we give the people, because this is so foundational.
Go for it, Miles.
All of us are in groups. Men are a group, women are a group, married men are a group. And if you're in one of those groups, that's your in group. If you're not in that group, you're part of the out group. Once you understand or identify an in group, you understand the variations of that in group. Men understand men better than women. Well, I think women understand women better than women. Mega church pastors understand. We all understand things that churches that 100 people don't know. Pastors of 100 people. So you understand variation. So as a ethnicity, Black people understand Black people, the variations. That's why some people you hear all Black people look alike, all Asians look alike, because that's our out group. And we stereotype, we generalize because that's your out group. So by definition, you don't understand the variations. That's why we make comments about that. Why this is so important is because by definition, your out group is a blind spot. And so if that's not your people, whatever it is, it could be, entrepreneurs, motivational speakers, whatever your groups are, if you are not in that group or part of an in group, you by definition have all kinds of blind spots. So instead of assuming from 2 or 3 anecdotal facts that your parents told you, you got from TV, just know you have huge blind spots and you should approach with caution. So this whole book, the foundation is in group, out group. And these principles apply to not only race, but they apply to gender, they apply to socioeconomic level, they apply to culture. And that's why it's so critical that when we look at each other, say, okay, are you in my in group, out group? If you're in my out group, I have stuff to learn. And that's how you start the conversation.
I love that. It's a great distinction. I'm so glad we got it. Okay, Mark. Hasn't this been incredible?
It truly has. I mean, watching you two leaders from different worldviews, but with one same dream to add value to people that you see as valuable is, guys, there's a lot of conversations happening right now, but you two have not only given us a way to come together with our similarities, as you're talking about, Miles, but you've also given us a way to add value through that. So thank you. Let's get to a couple of questions before we run out of time. The first one, Miles, we have a lot of people international that's watching the program today. The first one is from Elaine Jacob. And you'll see the picture, her question there on the screen. She says, my question would be for someone in South Africa. We are a country of huge diversity, but our democracy is only 20 years old. Looking back on your history, what could we be doing now that would have been missed by your country's legacy? Miles, we'll go with you first.
Man, that's a great question. I've been to South Africa a few times, don't know what you're doing, but I would say to having in your leadership the perspective of all the people. When one in group is making decisions for the out group, it doesn't work because they don't understand the out group. And so that's why representation is so important, because you form a new in group, which is one group of all the voices. I would say that's probably key, because that's going to determine all the perspective of the rules and the regulations. And not only ethnically, but even ideologically, you have legal people, but you also have pastoral people or social work people that can not only put in laws in place, but put laws with compassion and not laws that rule love out.
Wow.
I love that. And Mark, if I can tee off what Mark just said, democracy works at its best when everybody's heard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something, it works at its worst when it's like what we have right now in our country, partisan.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. It's just horrible, because I need that person across the aisle. I need their perspective. When the moment that you begin to be partisan in a democracy, you're basically saying my ideas are better than yours, and I'm not going to learn anything from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets back to the sides that he talked about in the third options. I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa. And it's sad to me. So what I think that when you value people, there's nothing greater that you can do than to ask them their opinion. You don't even have to agree with their opinion. I'm not saying we all have to line up and do Simon Says in this world, but I am just saying this, that every person that I meet has something to teach me. And if I have a teachable spirit, I'll learn from them and I'll become better because of them. But if I don't have a teachable spirit, then I won't become better. So I think that valuing the voice of people is very, very important. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so let's go to the next question. Dana Thorpe asked the question, Pastor Miles, what tool have you used that has been the most effective in discovering your blind spots? And then how do you help others determine their blind spots?
One of the best tools is to ask. Whenever I preach this, I always tease guys and say, hey, guys, why don't you go ask the women in your life if you're creepy? Because I don't know that any guy is really going to ask that question because they don't want to hear the answer. But I think one of the ways to understand your blind spots is to really ask your friends. Go straight to the person that could be offended by them, and give them permission to be honest with you. And then once they reveal it to you, humbly take it to God and say, Lord, I got to fix it out. And by the way, you can even ask them, how can I fix it? How can I do better? How can I say the right thing? How can I be more encouraging? That's probably the easiest, cleanest, most effective way to find your blind spots.
Very good. I agree with Miles.
Okay, good. Let's go to next question. Mariana Thomas, how do you promote diversity and equality without judgment?
Well, how do you do it, Mariana? You have to live it first. It's hard to determine or control someone else's heart. And so if you can model living it and expressing it without judgment, people are going to do what they do. But you have to be an example of it. A lot of times people will say, don't judge, but they're judging. But if you can model it and love people in humility, bring people together and have them, facilitate diverse groups. In our church, we have a Skittles church. We have all these nationalities. And what I do when I get up, when we used to meet, I would say, turn to somebody that doesn't look like you and ask them their name, say their name, and tell them you love them. And because we're diverse, so you don't have to look that far. You just, someone right next to you is usually a different shade. And so I'm modeling it all the time myself and encouraging people to practice it. And over time, they realize this works. And so that's what I would say. Live it, model it, and then encourage people.
I love that.
I want to follow up with one more question here, guys. It's a pre-submitted question. It's to both of you. Miles, we'll start with you. During this tough time in our nation, people are looking to their leaders, whether it's a pastor, a boss, elected official, to guide them. What advice do you have for those folks that are the movers and shakers in their communities during these times of heightened tension? How can we lead better in these times?
I think everyone, we have grown up. Look at John. We have grown up with, I'm right, you're wrong. It's my way or this way. And if we can say, okay, let's do the third option, and I mean by that is tell me how I can help you. Tell me how I can serve you. Turn this whole mentality upside down and be examples of humility, examples to learn, to listen. I always tell people, listen, learn, and then love. If leaders could do that, the people who follow them will do that. A lot of times people want to tell me what to do. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you listen, learn, and love? That is uncomfortable. It takes more time. It's humiliating sometimes. It's the opposite of me being in control. And that's exactly what we need. We need servants. You want to be great in the kingdom? Become a servant, not a master.
Okay. I made this statement. I was doing a teaching the other day, and I made this statement that I will help you if I see that you're needy. I will fix you if I see that you're broken. But I'll serve you if I see that you're valuable. If I'm fixing you and helping you, I feel that I have the upper hand, to be honest with you. I'm helping you out of the ditch. Okay. The moment that I see you as valuable, I serve you, that completely turns over. And what we really need is, of course, we want to help people that are broken. We want to help people that are in need. That isn't my issue. The issue is the spirit in which we do it. The moment I see you as valuable, I no longer have the upper hand because I serve you. I'm not coming here to fix you. I'm not coming here to teach you the thing. I'm just coming here to serve you. And I think that it's that spirit that is needed desperately. You know, people do what people see. We need some leaders that serve people and love people and value people. End of story. It's not Democrat. It's not Republican. It's good leadership. And we are missing it. And I just think that there's a call right now for leaders to humble themselves again. I mean, one of my favorite times in America was right after 9/11 for 6 months. America was a humbled nation. And I loved America more than I've ever loved America. And I loved everything about America because all of a sudden we got kicked pretty good and we realized that we're not high and mighty and it brought us down. We just need humble leaders that value people.
And I would say this, Mark and John, serve people who are not like you. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy to love your friends, but when you love your enemies or your out group, love the people that you're not normally around. That's really when you're going to see where people are going to see servanthood and humility is when you go out of your comfort zone and you go serve and love other people.
And Miles, every day, because I try to intentionally serve people every day I do my best to do an intentional act of service to somebody that doesn't know me. Because so there's no leverage. I mean, in other words, I do something to serve them and I walk away. They're never going to know who I am. That isn't the issue. And I do that so I can get into my out group that you're talking about a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to change. It's changed. That's why you have such a humble heart.
Well,
Hey, well, I want all of us to be in Miles McPherson's in group, starting with me, Miles. I got some stuff I want us to do together, me, you, and John, and our group. But I want to be in an in group with you. But let me talk to all of you for just a moment. Gang, our world needs a third option.
yes.
All of us, every one of us are tired of option one and option two. In fact, we don't even see them as an option anymore. We're looking for something different than what we've been trying to do for so long. And I think the third option is an answer to that. I think not only will it help us with our racially divided country, I think it'll help us with our politically divided country, with our business and poverty divided country. I believe there's principles in here that Miles has shared. And I want you right now, I'm going to put on the screen, I'm going to tell you where to go get this book. It is milesmcpherson.com. Miles McPherson, you see it down there. Miles McPherson, that's McPherson.com. And my prayer really, and I know it's John's too. John is a billboard, a human billboard for this book right now. I want you and I want everybody watching today to go get this book and let's start pursuing a third option. Now, Miles, you were telling me just right before we went live, you're in the process of developing an app called the Listening app. Can you give us just a minute on what that Listening app's going to be?
Yeah, and it should be on my website very soon. And Listening app is really what it does. I got to come up with a name for it, so I apologize. It literally will take you 2 minutes. You're probably going to answer 7 questions per 2 different topics. One is your experience with the police. We want to get the data from listening to the crowd. What actually is your experience? Number 2, what is your experience in talking about race? What's difficult and all the different, from base your age, your gender, where you live. What's difficult, what's easy, and so we can develop a system to help people talk about race. Those 2 questions, and I promise you it'll take you no more than 3 minutes to answer all the questions. It's probably 7 questions per topic, and then we're going to put the data. If you give your email, we'll send the data to you. If not, we're going to put it on our website. When we get the data, we would love to get 100,000 people to respond to get the data, so we can have some really good data to share with the police, the governments, the politicians. Here's what people are saying. Let's make laws and adjustments based on reality, not your perception.
MilesMcPherson.com. You can order the book. You can get the app. John, anything you want to close us out with? And Miles, you too.
And Mark, the other thing we're going to talk about if you're a business guy, a woman, buy bulk. We have that on there as well. Buy for your staff, but we're going to have that similarity training coming up in the summertime, which is going to be to train your staff over 5 or 6 hours on all this. So we're very excited about that.
And for all of you in the John Maxwell team, which is just a portion of this audience, we're talking to Miles about that as well. So you just need to know we're all on that. And I got Miles by the arm, my friend. I'm getting in that in group. John, come on, John.
I'm pleased. I'm very pleased. I'm not surprised because I know Miles. I know who he is, and I love him, and I value him greatly. I value he's a terrific leader. He's a wonderful friend. He's a terrific leader, and he's given us a terrific resource in the Third Option book. I'm just, when you finish something like this, Mark, we look at each other and we ask ourselves a very simple question. Did we help our people? Did we add value to people? This is the only reason I'm doing this. I'm not doing this for any other reason, to add value to you. And Miles, you didn't add value to us. You multiplied value to us today. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, my honor. And thank you for being my friend and just living what you preach.
Love you, my friend. Love you.
Thank you. The real heroes are you on this call that really is trying to make a difference in your community, in your life. So thank you for joining us on this program, Leadership When It Matters the Most. We promise you we'll bring you another leader that will make a difference. In the meantime, if you'd like to know more about joining our team, go to johnmaxwellteam.com and we'll have more information for you there. Thank you. Have a great week. Let's make a difference together.